Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm going to do something different today, and that's revisit one of the videos that we did last week and just go over some of the comments. I think this might be an interesting for some people because it got quite a few diverse comments, and a lot of people were on both sides of the fence with this. And the video I did last week was for a guy who was 3 months without alcohol, 3 months into the journey, and he was saying that he had started drinking zero alcohol beer. And what do I think of it? So I did a video on that, and this is just a follow up on based on the comments. So I got a message from the guy I did the video for, and he was delighted with the video, and kind of the advice fell into what he was thinking himself. So that's from his perspective. All right, let's look at some of these comments. Don't do it, it's a big trap. Okay. It depends on who you are, right? Is a trap if you think it's a trap. It would be like a cigarette with a filter. Your brain feels cheated. Kind of, I get where you're coming from with this. It's if you miss the taste of alcohol, if you miss the smell of alcohol, if you notice the alcohol is missing, then you're going to feel like something is cheating your brain, and that's a danger, I think. I just don't want to test myself with zero alcohol. That's from the same person. Frost Fox. What's the point? Just me talking. Exactly. I mean, most of these, everything about this is you're making a value judgment about these things, and if it doesn't suit you, for sure don't do it. If you're worried about it, for sure don't do it. I didn't. I think I said in the video it was closing in on. It was either on the first year or it was in the second year that I had my first alcohol-free beer. And I think in the beginning I was nervous about it as well, so that's why I didn't. I certainly didn't in the beginning. In my opinion, ex-alcoholics going on the zero beer route on a regular basis, recipe for disaster. It's not. I mean, I know plenty of people who are doing this. Again, it depends on the person. It really does depend on the person. I've got quite a lot of people within our community, within the people that I'm coaching, who use alcohol-free beers successfully. And successfully depends on the way that you're looking at it. It depends on a mindset that you put it into it. If you think that like I said, you're missing out on something, then I would never say that you should do this, because it is that you get in that you get in the feeling that you want something that you can't have. And if you're putting yourself into a situation, most of the time when people are doing this, they're in situations, they're doing it because they want to be in a situation where, like if you're going down to the pub on a regular basis, I recommend not going to the pub on a regular basis, never mind the alcohol or the zero alcohol beer. I don't think it matters in those cases. Your friends don't want you there if you're drinking zero alcohol beer. So a lot of them are going to try and sabotage you. So it's just not a good place to be, I don't think, if you're stopping drinking. It's the same thing if you were stopping smoking and you were going out into these smoking rooms with people who were smoking and just saying, oh, well, I'm used to being here and, my friends are out here, so I'm coming out here, It's just, that's not a good idea. I want to stop drinking, but I always drink. Okay. Depends on the individual. Exactly. I use 0 to 0.5 sometimes when I do the cooking in the kitchen while cooking. Yes, it's a bit of a habit, but it's never spilled over to ruin the progress. That's it. It takes the habit edge off. If it helps, do it. I like the taste, but hate the effect it used to have. And that's the point. It's the effect that it used to have. We're not moving away from the beer. We're moving away from the alcohol and the alcohol lifestyle. We're not stopping drinking alcohol. If there was no consequences to our drinking alcohol, we wouldn't be stopping. But alcohol is the poison. Alcohol is the thing that is the agent, the toxin that is reacting in your body and causing you all these physical problems. But the drunkenness, everything that you get because you're putting this stuff into your body, that's ruining your life. And that's what we're trying to get away from, is that. So mine is for taste and habit only. Never want the alcohol effect again. Exactly. So he's made up his mind. And for those in those situations, it becomes 0% beer is the beer that you like to drink. I liken 0% beer to a sort of Sinclair method without the naltrexone. Kind of. kind of. But naltrexone is a drug, and I'm not. If you could help it at all, I mean, there's some people who need it, who feel they need it. They need to have that help to get them over the edge. Fair enough. Eventually, neuroplasticity will change the dynamic consumer beer in your brain. Yeah, it is. 0% beer is produced by the same companies that produce 5% beer. I don't. I want to go over these and just give them a like. I appreciate that. I haven't done that all the way down. So, 0% beer is produced by the same companies that produce 5% beer. Please don't buy, don't drink, don't sponsor. I get where you're coming from, but for a start, you don't know. You know, the alcohol companies they finance a lot of different stuff, so you don't know where their money is going. You know, their profits are reinvested into other companies, and you have no idea where that is. I mean, for instance, some of the some of the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies, they now own some of the biggest processed food companies, Nabisco, places like that. They own some of the detergent companies, you know. So what do you do then? You say, well, I'm not going to sponsor these. I think you have to give them credit for creating a palatable alternative. I wish there was an alternative there when I started drinking, not because I wouldn't have started drinking, but it might have given me something there to say, well, yeah. I think it might have made me second guess myself in the beginning if there was a palatable alternative. I don't know. Maybe that's just me thinking. I don't know. There's still 0.5%. I feel it and I don't like it. See, this is a problem. I don't think you feel it. I think it's more a contextual placebo. I think you're feeling the context of the thing. I think, you know, if you're drinking 3 or 4 beers in a row, I think you get a placebo effect off it. Let's put it like this. There's 0.5% roughly in a glass of orange juice. So you can tell me that you drink a glass of orange juice and you feel a buzz off it. So it's definitely something along the lines of placebo. I mean, have a look at this. There's plenty of videos online where you can see people drinking a shitload of alcohol-free beer, trying to get drunk, and they're getting nowhere near. You know, they just feel negative, bloating, and you know, that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm not trying to tell you that you don't feel it or not. I don't know. It is what it is. 0 alcohol drinks are no better than alcohol drinks. I don't agree with that. I think the alcohol makes them bad. Yeah, you're not getting a like for that one. I would not advise 0 beers when it's only 3 months. I agree. Your pleasure centres may just want you to get back to the alcohol. I do regularly drink 0. So that's the problem. I think it is, if you're looking at this from the long-term view, and there's a lot of people that are in my position or in Moira's position where you haven't been drinking for a long time and you feel safe doing it. I think if you're in that position at 3 months, I certainly wasn't in a position in 3 months where I was thinking about not drinking. I was thinking about drinking alcohol-free beers. For sure I wasn't. You know, it was just, I didn't want anything to do with it. I hated alcohol, I hated beer, I hated wine, I hated everything to do with it. And yeah, that was just the way it was. But if you feel confident in that case and it's not leading you back down that road, like I said, if this guy is going to pubs and he's using them in order to still be with his mates, to still not change the underlying motivations for drinking, you know, being in bars, trying to get something out of the alcohol-free beers that you can't get, then that's a problem. I was never a beer drinker, but I'd ask a person what is their motivation for wanting 0 beer, and I'm saying if you sit in a barber chair long enough, you'll get a haircut. Now that is not true of the alcohol-free beer, but it is true of the bars. So if you sit in a bar long enough and you're watching other people getting drunk and, you know, getting on their high when you're used to getting your high and you're not getting it anymore, you know, that's a good saying for that. But for alcohol-free beers, no, that doesn't work that way. And another person who's saying that 0 beers and mocktails are now multi-billion. Yeah, there's plenty of multi-billion dollar industries out there. Healthcare is a multi-billion dollar industry. You know, petroleum, wind farms, solar panels, everything, big business. So, I mean, if you can get your alcohol-free beers locally, but they can't do it. So, I don't know. Very helpful, thank you. Strongly advise, don't even think about it. I've been there and it's a trap. You have to accept the average. No, that's, nobody has to accept they have a disease. That's the wrong way of thinking about this in total. Keeps you hooked into the mentality it's just, I think, if somebody goes through their life with the identity of an alcoholic or diseased, and that's what they have to bring with them for the rest of their life, that's a fucking tragedy. So, no. If you hang around in a hairdresser long enough, you'll end up having a haircut. Yeah, it's the same one. You copied off that one. 400 days and 0 beers, what am I doing? Go on then. I'd love to hear what you mean by this. There's not a lot of information here. 400 days, 0 beers, what am I undoing? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in your life. I guarantee you, there's not many people that are around me for any length of time that do 400 days and they're in any risk of any undoing, right? Because it's the way that people are motivated to move themselves forwards, to make a different life for themselves. Stop the flow, do the work, move on. And it's that moving on part. If you're at 400 days and you haven't moved on, I mean, I guarantee you that you drink an alcohol-free beer after 400 days, you won't notice the alcohol anymore. I can look at an alcohol-free beer and that is beer for me. If I smell a beer with alcohol in it, that's not beer. It just smells awful. It's like wine smells awful to me. I drink the most evens, no problem. Once you got the emotional sober, you don't crave alcohol anymore. Read, listen, yeah, I agree with that. I see an alcohol beer as a tightrope temptation. I would smoke THC-free pot. Is that a thing? If you were disgusted with pot. I wouldn't smoke pot in the first place, but like I said, it's all a personal thing. I love Guinness 0.0. Doesn't tempt me one bit to go to the real stuff. I have to agree with that, and it depends on the amount of time that you've like. I would never, ever. My son, I remember my son when he stopped first, and we went in. I think he was a few months off it, and I was over there visiting. I said, "Do you want a 0.0?" He said, "Not a chance." And now he's had a few, and he likes it. But it becomes that, there's more distance between yourself and the habit, and it's just easier, and you can enjoy the taste then instead of the rest of it. So, yeah. As of September 7th, 2025, I'm 3 years sober. I do have the occasional 0.0 beer, especially with pizza and restaurant. However, I recently spent a night at bought some 0.0 Heineken, 4 in succession, and others were drinking quite quickly. Then I realized that I had a small buzz, like a real mild stimulation in my frontal lobe. I switched to water and the mild buzz went quickly. Checked the can, it said it had 0.05% alcohol, which meant I consumed 0.2% alcohol, which I didn't notice. I guess I've become quite sensitive. Again, there's there's that amount of alcohol, there's 0.5% of alcohol in a ripe banana or a glass of orange juice, up to that. So it depends obviously on how old the orange juice is. I mean, obviously if you leave orange juice for a long, long time, it's going to be more than 0.5%, but you wouldn't get drunk off a glass of orange juice or eating a ripe banana. I can tell you that I've eaten a lot of ripe bananas in my time. Just go and have a look at some of my earlier videos and you'll see it there. Oh, Jesus. Mental to think about it. My question is, how do I give up alcohol? My husband is. That's a good question, and we'll certainly do a video on that. Let me just copy that, and I'll paste it over here. Sorry. I tried alcohol-free Guinness and was surprised how good it tasted, but after I felt very odd and realised my demon was upset. Yeah, wanted the real thing, so yeah. That's it. So don't be doing it if your demon is upset. Personally, at risk 3 months, a huge risk. Another person who's saying, yeah, it depends. you're saying that personally. 3.5 years sober now and started having a few zero beers and have no craving. So it's another person who's a long time into it and understands. They said the ship has sailed. However, many people get the taste for it along with the habit of lifting that ice cold bottle. You see, the problem is that when you're starting out first, you're very close to the old habit, so you notice the drink. I've heard a few people calling it, and they'll say, well, it reminds you of the real stuff. Now, if you still think in your mind of alcohol in beer as the real stuff, then you're not ready to stop. What you have to get to is where this guy is, or where Moira was, where 3.5 years sober and started having a few zero beers, and that to them is a beer. For me, a beer is 0% alcohol. There's only one time that I ever had that I mistakenly had a beer, and it was a weird situation. We'd driven all the way down from Andorra to Spain, so it was probably about 8 hours once we'd taken in letting the dogs out for walks every so often and having something to eat. So 8 hours, and we were tired, and it was my sister's birthday we were going to, and we got to their house, and on the way to their house we'd stopped in I think it was Aldi's or Lidl's, one of the big supermarket chains anyway, and Esther went in and zero beers. We got these zero beers up there and we had a drink, and I thought, this tastes awful. What the hell is wrong with this beer, And my sister's husband turned around and he says, that's alcohol beer. I says, no, it's 0.0, look. And then I saw it on the can. It said Oro, O-R-O, which in Spanish is gold, but it just like 0.0. And yeah, I hadn't drunk much of it, and that was it. But that was the only time I've ever mistaken. But I didn't mistake the taste. As soon as the taste got in there, I noticed it straight away. I didn't know it was, because I thought it was 0.0 beer, so I didn't associate it with the alcohol. I just thought it tasted weird. 0% beers are a win for me. After 2 months sober, helps me 1 or 2 NAs in a social situation to blend in, does not stimulate the booze cravings. Now, it depends on the social situation that you're going to, as I said. If you're using alcohol-free beers to go and spend nights in a bar with your friends, and that's all that's going on, I would avoid that at all costs. If it's a social situation, like I've used it for, I think probably one of the first times I ever drank an alcohol-free beer was at one of my niece's birthdays here in Spain. So we go to a birthday party, and most people are drinking, most of the adults are drinking, not heavily, but they're drinking a glass of wine, glass of beer, and to be standing around with, for me, an orange juice would be gone. That would be it, a glass of orange juice or a glass of water. It's just not the same. So I think that was the first time I had a glass of beer, and you feel like you're partaking. And the most I would drink in those situations is a couple, and then, yeah, that's it. But to try and lever yourself into an old alcohol situation where you're trying to be with your alcohol drinking buddies and they're getting drunk and you're not, that's gonna bite you in the arse eventually. I think you either get fed up with it. I stopped drinking for 10 months, a long time before I actually stopped this time, and I tried to do that, going into a bar and drinking with my mates, and having a meal. I think it was water at the time I was drinking. There was no proper alcohol-free beers there, so I wasn't doing that. And I think at the time I was like, yeah, there's no chance I'm paying €5 for an alcohol-free beer, the same price as you would for a normal beer. And I just didn't do it. But I only lasted with that for a few times because my mates didn't want me there. They were taking the piss. What the fuck are you doing, And it's like, and I just found it boring. As soon as they started getting drunk, it was like, yeah, I'm going. Best of luck with you. And then you just stop going in. So, but I knew I was going back onto the alcohol then after the year. I'd only stopped for that year to, I got a DUI. So, Johnny Cola, if you want to go down that road, Bavaria non-alcoholic, I'm not sure if that's, Bavaria is a very specific brand. I think it's European, no? I don't have to do that in the States. Yeah, we've got some good alcohol-free beers here in Spain as well. I think they are very risky. It might stimulate your cravings for alcohol. Be very careful. Yeah, so it's very careful early in your sobriety. So that's about it. We'll leave it there. As you can see, there's a good mixture of judgments here. If you're talking about it as the real thing, you know, like it's not the real thing. That's a value judgment. You're placing a value on the alcohol, and you're saying that that's the real thing. While zero alcohol is not. And you will get to that stage if you're not drinking long enough, where 0% beer will be the real value. I mean, we're all smart, right? We're all intelligent enough to know if something is not working for us. You have to listen to yourself. You have to listen to your own instincts about this. If you feel like it's detrimental to you, don't do it. You know, it's not the beer that we're getting away from. It's the alcohol. You know. You know, it is what it is. I remember sitting there with self and Esther went out with one of our friends, and we hadn't seen her for a long time. It was a vegan restaurant we went to. This was after I'd stopped being a vegan myself. And it was because she wanted to go there, so we went there. And we were sat at the table, and I ordered a 0 Coke. And she was shocked. She was like, what? How can you put that into your body? I said, look what you've got in front of you there, you know, a glass of wine. And it was just, you know, for me, I'd rather put a 0 Coke into my body than a glass of wine, because the 0 Coke is, you know, it might do something to me if I drank too many of them in terms of the physical stuff, but it's not going to change my brain chemistry, you know. At least I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it is what it is. A small amount of alcohol, that 0%, 0.5% is not a problem. That's the same amount that's in an orange juice or a ripe banana. So don't be worried about that. You know, it's the massive amounts of alcohol that we're trying to get away from. You know, your body can handle that small amount of alcohol. I mean, it's whether or not your mind can handle it. And if your mind is in that state where that small amount of alcohol is tricking you and is pushing you towards thinking about drinking alcohol again, then avoid it. That's what it boils down to. All right, I'll leave it there for today. I hope you enjoyed this one. I know this is not one of my regular ones, but if you like this and we go over a second for some of the comments, then we'll do more of these. Take care of yourself, and I'll speak to you again. Let me know if you have any questions, if you've got any problems that you would like me to deal with. I mean, I'll show you this one here, like this one with the 400 days zero beers, what my undoing. I mean, I'd love to know more about that. Really. I mean, that just intrigues me. How did you get to 400 days and 0 beers? You were going to a bar, I'd say. You know, you were trying to live that life or trying to reintegrate yourself back in with your drinking buddies. But I that's only my assumption. But I'd love to hear from you, free agent for life. All right. Take care of yourself. Onwards and upwards.